Hello, and we are live. Welcome everyone. My name is Martin from the team at Reedsy. Thank you for coming to this live stream on this fine Wednesday afternoon, evening, depending where you are. Before we start, do let us know where you're coming from. Always happy to hear that. As I said, my name is Martin. I'm based here in the UK, a member of the team at Reedsy. We're a marketplace that connects writers with some of the world's best editors, book cover designers, marketers, you name it. If you need them to help you publish a book, you'll find them right here on Reedsy. Today, we've got a really fantastic presentation from what is one of the sort of most prominent voices in the self-publishing world. I've met her in person once. We were in Las Vegas at a publishing conference, and yeah, she is one of the sort of most coveted speakers within that space. She's sort of authority on a lot of sort of publishing topics, always at the bleeding edge of sort of technological changes, which I'm sure she'll cover a bit of today as we talk about nonfiction. Nonfiction, which is, I think very often, and she might cover this, like sort of mistaken as being, like history books or textbooks, but within sort of our context in publishing and self-publishing, they sort of take on a very different meaning. I won't say any more, just in case she does cover it. Now let's see who is with us today. Chuck from the sunny suburbs of Mammoth, Arizona. Fantastic. Linda from Escondido, California. M. Allison from Jaffrey, New Hampshire. Karen from Melbourne, Australia. A nice early morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Deepa from India. Louis from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Sandrine from Canada. Wonderful. Let's go a bit further down. Laura from Malaga in Spain. Chris from Bristol, UK. Paul from Ottawa. Elaine from Kent. Rebecca from Tucson, Arizona. Welcome. We have Afterlife Nights, Cumbria. John from Cape Cod. Really good to see so many of you joining. If this is your first one, we are live right now, unless you're watching this later, in which case this was live in the past. This is streaming here on YouTube and will be available here forever and ever, ideally. Our guest today will be sharing a bit of a PowerPoint presentation, a slide deck. We won't be sending them around, but if you come back to this page on YouTube or onto blog.reedsy.com/live. You'll find this video and you can just scrub through and find all the slides and replay it as many times as you like. Good to see everyone joining. Robin from Los Angeles. Hope you're keeping safe, Robin. I've got some friends there who are sort of been impacted by the wildfires going on. We have Julie from Yorba Linda, California. And Elena from Las Vegas. Good to see so many people with us here tonight. I'm sure more will keep on streaming in. Seeing as we're the early and eager crowd, if you could do me a favor and give this video a like, and maybe even subscribe to the channel. Be the first to know about all our upcoming events. That will sort of help out me, help out the channel, help out the community, and I certainly appreciate it. Okay, so we are now reaching the 8 o'clock mark where I am. Which means it's 3 p.m. in the East Coast, noon on the West Coast. I think just after midnight in India, 3 or 4 in Hong Kong, and maybe 7 in Sydney. Glad everyone can join us in their various time zones. Last time we did this, I tried to play the opening sequence. That failed. Let's see if it works this time. Welcome to Reedsy Live. Hello and welcome to Reedsy Live, Reedsy's ongoing series of webinars where we bring on professionals from the world of publishing to show you how to write and publish better books. Today we have a fantastic guest and a great presentation about nonfiction, and we are going to learn her 7 steps to writing nonfiction in 2025. Thank you everyone for joining us wherever you are today. If this is your first time, you are very welcome indeed. We've got a lot to cover in the time we have allotted here. I promise you we'll be in and out in an hour and we'll deliver you a lot of great content. So without much further ado, let me bring on my guest, who is a writer, podcaster, a creative entrepreneur, and international professional speaker. Writing as J.F. Penn, she is the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of thrillers and dark fantasy novels, as well as the award-winning memoir, Pilgrimage: Lessons Learned from Solo Walking 3 Ancient Ways. You can find her on thecreativepenn.com. Please welcome Joanna Penn. Joanna, how are you?
Hi, Martin, and hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, I believe you are based in the UK as well. Is it in areas unknown, or can you sort of shape up the sort of rough area we could find you?
Yeah, I'm in Bath in the southwest, and yeah, famous for the Roman baths over 2,000 years old. So, the old and the new today.
Oh, fantastic. Well, really pleased to have you here. I think people are still continuing to roll on in, but yeah, we met you in I met you in Las Vegas just a few months ago. I believe you are sort of a long time contact of my colleague Ricardo. How do you find sort of making your way around the sort of convention scene and sort of speaking to fellow authors?
Oh, it's good fun. And yes, I've known Ricardo since the beginning of Reedsy and found many professionals there. So definitely a fan. And yeah, there's so much to learn now as authors. There's a lot of information out there. So we're going to try and distill some of that for you today.
Wonderful. Well, I've got your presentation just on the other page. I think, yeah, I'm driving it from my side, but I'll also be behind the scenes keeping an eye on the comments. I think Joe can see them as well. But there will be a Q&A at the end, so if we don't cover any question you have, we'll be able to sort of round back out to it at the end. Joe, if you need anything, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll be in the wings.
Let's go. Okay, so today we're going to cover 7 steps to write your non-fiction book in 2025. And I guess Martin gave me a bit of an introduction, but just so you know, I've written over 45 books, different genres, different author names, and I've got a couple of podcasts, and I've been a full-time author entrepreneur since 2011. And non-fiction of various different genres, as well as fiction, has been a big part of my career. And one of my latest books is How to Write Nonfiction. So that's kind of forming the spine of what I'm talking about today. So we have not that much time, so we're going to jump straight into it. Now, step one, and this is so important regardless of what you are writing, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or whatever subgenre of nonfiction, is clarify your why. Why are you writing this book? Why do you care so much about this book that you will go through everything you need to get it out there? Is it because you want to share your expertise? Is it to bring in new business? Is it to inspire people to share an experience you've been through, like my memoir Pilgrimage, for example? Compare that to How to Write Nonfiction. These are very, very different books. So this is the very first question I want you to think about is, why are you doing this? And what is your definition of success? Because this is where I find a lot of authors struggle. For example, they might say, oh, I just want to share my story of transformation. And then later on, they say, well, why isn't this bringing in new business for my, for my other books or my other business? And it may be that it just doesn't flow through. So how will you know when you reach this definition of success, and what is it about you that is so fitting to this topic, to this subgenre? So that would be my first challenge to you. So let's get into the second point. Now, while the first point is really all about you, and of course, writing our books, it is about us, it's about our journey, it's about our experience, the reasons we want to write it. But this is probably where most authors do fall down, is that they actually forget about the reader and understanding the person on the other side of the book or on the other side of the screen, as it is. This is also an extremely difficult question, especially for people like me. If you're a discovery writer, which I am, which is the book sometimes bubbles up from your brain rather than being imposed on from the top down. So many people do plot, they do plan, they are very logical. Other people like me, it's more like a load of chaos that you're trying to wrangle into something like a book. So these are some of the questions for you to consider around your target audience. Who will benefit from your book? Now, most new writers in particular will say, oh, everyone will benefit from my book. And I remember saying that with my first book, which was nonfiction. It's called Career Change. And it was about people who want to leave corporate jobs to do something else. And I was like, oh, everybody needs this book. And of course, that wasn't true. So you have to think about what problems are you solving? And also, then you can get into the more granular side of things, demographics and psychographics. Now, personally, I struggle a bit with demographics because as a middle-aged white British woman who's married with cats, I want to write books, and whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, we have that in common. You also want to write books, or you do write books. So our demographics matter less than our psychographics, and that is more about personality type. It's about preferences and worldview, and we all value creativity. We all value writing, and we have that in common, and we like books. Put us in a bookshop and we're probably going to be happy. With understanding your reader, one of the main things to do is study similar books in your niche, sometimes called comps. Now, writers hear this a lot. It can be very annoying. So I'm going to introduce in this slide deck some prompts that you can use with ChatGPT, and I am absolutely not suggesting you use AI to write your book. What I am suggesting is you use AI to help you shape things around your book. And this is one very good thing, which is the target audience. So hopefully you can see this. My prompt to ChatGPT: I'm writing a book that's about solo walking and pilgrimage and midlife, and it's probably a memoir because at this point you might not know what it is, but might also have self-help and some tips. Can you please give me 20 books that are similar to this idea? And then it's going to give you 20. Obviously, I've not listed everything there. So that is one way you can start to find examples that will help you. And on the next slide, and I realize there's a bit of a time difference here, but hopefully you can see this now, which says, can you give me a list of 10 different target markets for this kind of book? So what that will then do, and I've just put a couple of them up here: midlife readers seeking transformation, people aged 40 to 60 navigating life transition, themes like menopause, empty nesting, midlife career change, solo travelers, pilgrims. So you can see how even if you don't have a book or you don't have a lot of ideas, you can still get some help around your target market from ChatGPT. Okay, so let's get into number 3. So this is where we're getting a bit more specific. So we've got some ideas about us and why we're doing this. We've got some ideas about our audience and what problems we might solve for them and who they might be. Now we have to define the book idea a bit more clearly, because otherwise it will be very hard to write. So this is, again, easier if you have these comparison titles, because I find with non-fiction, it's this huge thing. It can mean so many different sub niches. So is this a memoir like Wild by Cheryl Strayed, which I'm sure many of you have read? That was one of my models. It was like, yes, it's like that. It's not just a how to do solo walking or how to write nonfiction, which is a much more practical kind of how-to guide. So if you have these other books in mind, it will help you with structuring your own. And again, you can use tools, AI tools, to refine your idea. First of all, you could get suggestions for titles and subtitles. So again, here is what I asked ChatGPT, and this is all on the same chat. So that's a way to kind of brainstorm with the tool. Can you please give me 10 different titles and subtitles for a book like this, focusing on the different target markets? Now, what this actually does is really help you to niche down, and it will also give you ideas on how you might shape the book. So some examples here: steps to the self, walking through midlife's challenges to find clarity and purpose, or walk your way free, overcoming life's obstacles. So what I like about asking ChatGPT or Claude for book titles and subtitles is it can just help you think yes or no. And sometimes you just want to know what you don't want, and that can help move you towards what you do want. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. Now, let's say that you have now decided, okay, this is where I'm going to go with it. We can then move into structuring and organizing your book. Now, just to take a step back a little, as I mentioned before, I'm a kind of chaotic discovery writer in that I don't do this first. So I don't structure and organize my book before writing. I generally write and then structure it later. So obviously we're doing 7 steps and they're kind of a linear process, but as ever, think about it more of a sort of choose your own adventure around these different steps, and they're more in a circle than in a line. So when it comes to structuring your book and organizing your book, the first thing I say for nonfiction writing is using your existing assets is a good idea. So many of us, so I'm an international speaker, I'm sure many of you are speakers, you might be podcasters, you might be doing talks, you might be a teacher, you might have all these different things. You might just have handwritten notes, you might have lots of files, and this is where, or you can just talk and do some dictation and then do transcription. So you may already have a lot of material. You may also want to discovery write. So again, one of the things I will often suggest with ChatGPT is say, okay, now ask me 20 questions about the topic of this book. And then you can start recording your answers to those questions. And that may be the basis of what you turn into a book. So use the tools that you have out there. I mean, again, AI transcription, you could use Otter, you can use, there's lots of different transcription tools. Creating a draft table of contents is also something that can be useful at this stage, although as I said, I often reorganize things later. But you do want to break your book into manageable sections. I personally use Scrivener to write. I've used it since probably 2010. I've been using Scrivener. And then one thing to keep in mind as you go through this is really considering the transformational journey for your readers. How will they be changed by the process of your book? So obviously with How to Write Nonfiction, you go from having not written nonfiction to having finished a book of nonfiction some kind. With my book Pilgrimage, it was really a transformation from being lost to being found, a bit like the Cheryl Strayed example. Now, again, if you need help with this, you can continue with the chat that you were having before, or again, come back to it later. This is an example of where I used one of the titles that chat came up with. So I said, thanks, I like Walk Your Way Free. And in fact, I didn't use AI when I did Pilgrimage. It was a few years ago now. But I think if I had ChatGPT, I might have called things a different name and come up with some different stuff. But anyway, I said, Walk Your Way Free, Overcoming Life's Obstacles Through the Art of Pilgrimage. Can you please give me a structure of 20 chapters? And then what it will do is come up with 20 chapters that can almost give me a framework. And then I can start answering these questions. And in fact, what's interesting is how I ended up structuring my book is very similar to how it comes up with it. Now, it does know my book, so perhaps that's why. But this first one, the initial pull toward pilgrimage, why walk, why now? What I could then do in the writing process is I could just start answering that question. I could get out my phone. I could just talk into whatever software on the computer. I mean, every single word processing thing has a record button, a dictation mode. Now, someone here just asked, what is ChatGPT? So if you just go to chatgpt.com, it is an app on your phone, but there are lots and lots of fake apps. So I would suggest going to chatgpt.com and you can use it for free. There's a free plan. It's just a really useful AI tool, which you can have on your phone too, but download it from there because you'll get the right one. Maybe Martin can put that link in the chat there. Oh, and Linda said, lovely Camino book. Thank you, Linda. I'm very proud of that book. Okay, so let's talk about writing and editing, because I feel like everything we've talked about so far, Some of you will be like, yeah, of course, that's really obvious about what I'm writing because this, because that. But when it comes to the actual writing and editing, this is really where I start as a discovery writer. If you're a plotter or a planner, then you will have, you'd be fine with the linear method. But for me, this kind of writing and editing process, this is where I spend a lot of the time up front. And what I found with pilgrimage, certainly less so with my practical how-to books. Pilgrimage took several years. It was over 100,000 words in a draft because I did this. I was writing it first and then I organized it later. So there's benefits either way. With How to Write Nonfiction, which is actually, this is the second edition, so I already had a structure, and maybe we can always come back with on the second edition thing. I just saw someone saying using AI seems like cheating. As I said, I'm not suggesting you use it for writing. I'm suggesting you use it to help you identify your target market and your comparison titles, which in many authors' experience is the weakest thing we have. We love the writing and the editing. Most of us do not enjoy marketing. And those positioning things, especially if you're going to write a book proposal. So if you want a book deal with a traditional publisher, you need to write a book proposal, which we don't have time to cover, but maybe there's some Reedsy sessions on that. But a book proposal, you have to answer all these questions. You have to say who the target market is. You have to do your market research on your psychographics, your demographics. Now, as an indie author, we often don't bother to do that, but it is a really important thing. And if you don't do it before you write, you certainly have to do it after you write in order to do your marketing. So it's not cheating, it is amplifying it's difficult to do on your own. Okay, so let's talk about the writing and the editing side of things. This is the biggest tip. Commit to a writing schedule. Now, I use Google Calendar. It's one of the first things I look at every day. I have it on my phone and I schedule time with myself. And that time with myself, it's either with Joanna Penn for my nonfiction or JF Penn for mostly my fiction. And in fact, this morning I was working on my next novel. I had a block of time in my calendar. I turn up as I would, like I've turned up for you on time, you all turned up on time, and we're being respectful of each other's time here. And that's what I do with my own time. This is what I find people fail on, is that they think, oh, when I have time or when I have space in my calendar, then I will write. But the reality is that will never come. So you have to find it somewhere. And what will you give up? Will you give up that series on Netflix? Will you give up some social time? Will you give up a different hobby in order to finish this book? If you want to really get this book done in 2025, then you have to make time. So already for me, the whole year has been blocked out with my writing time. I know how much time I have every week. Now, before I was full time, I had a day job like many of you, and it was stressful. It was in corporate and everything. So I would get up an hour earlier in the morning to do my writing. I only really got in 45 minutes on a weekday, but that was enough to get me started. And I did 5 years of that before I went full time. So I want to challenge you on this. If you are not getting through the draft of your book, whatever it is, fiction, nonfiction, short stories, whatever it is, then get a calendar app, whatever you want to use. As I said, I use Google Calendar, and schedule that time as you would with anyone else you respect, and then turn up for that meeting with yourself and do the work. Got to be hard about it. Using timed writing sessions or sprints. There are also some kind of online things you can join where you all write together. You can go to a cafe, but mainly that first thing is drafting. And I've put here without perfectionism, because that first draft, like as I said, my first draft of Pilgrimage was over 100,000 words, and there was so much repetition. I mean, even this second edition of How to Write Nonfiction, I was like, goodness me, there's some repetition in here that all needs to be cut. But in the first draft, you're really just trying to get it down. Then how my process works is after I've self-edited on the screen in Scrivener, I then print it out and I hand edit with old school pen. And like I print it out. In fact, I've got old manuscripts. This might even, yeah, this is actually one. I use it as rough paper once I finish, but I don't even know what this is. It's probably How to Write Nonfiction. Oh no, it's a novel. It's a draft of a novel. So essentially, I print it out and then I scribble on it. And I generally go to a cafe to do that. And that's when I do the moving stuff around. So I'll be like, oh no, that needs to be before there, and that needs to go there, and I need to write that, and I need to research that. And so that hand edit, when I scribble things, that is a big chunk of work. And this is another thing I find, is that people don't allow enough time for that self editing. And I don't know whether it's just me or maybe it's my age, but I really like doing it by hand. I think when you take it off the screen, it changes the look of the manuscript. And as I said, I don't know if you can see, I print it out so that it looks like a book. So there's like 2 pages to the screen, to the page, sorry, 2 pages to a page. So it looks like a book. If you folded it together, it would be a book. So once I do that, then I work with Pro Writing Aid. Obviously, Reedsy has an editor, and you can find human editors through Reedsy as well as use the online tools. And I personally use Pro Writing Aid, which is AI powered. You can also use Grammarly, also AI powered. And then I work with my human editor, Kristen, who then helps me shape the book for its final publication. So this How to Write Nonfiction is an indie book. Most of my books are indie. Okay, so lots of questions there. I kind of missed them, so we might have to come back for them using later. Oh, somebody said, what is using Reedsy? So Reedsy are hosting this event. You can go to reedsy.com and you can find wonderful freelance people to help you with editing, as well as all kinds of other things. Okay, so I just saw FJ's comment here. Writing a memoir, finding setting aside time is difficult. Sometimes I'm not inspired to write at that moment. And FJ, I totally know what you mean, but being inspired doesn't mean you don't write. I think this is one of these damaging myths that people have, thinking that you have to be inspired to sit down and write. You don't. It is work like other work. Sometimes, briefly, there is some spark of something amazing, and you might feel like, wow, I'm really in the zone, but that is so rare. It really is. If you go to your work, do you feel inspired to do your work? I mean, you have to go and say, right, I'm going to write something terrible. And then if you start writing something terrible, something good will come out of it, or you can edit it into something good. I feel like maybe you're being held back by what you think you should be writing. Maybe try what I suggested at the beginning, which was, you can even again ask ChatGPT, ask me 20 questions about this topic, and then it will ask you 20 questions, and then use those questions as your writing prompts. So don't start with a blank page, start with questions, and then be more free into how you answer things. Okay. Right, this next one, number 6. Okay, consider how you will get your book into the world and reach readers. So this is where at some point you have to start thinking about your publishing model. Now, as I mentioned before, if you're going to do traditional publishing, you don't even write the book. You write a book proposal, and then you try and sell the book proposal, pardon me, and then you write the book once the book proposal has sold. If you're going indie, you write the book and then you publish the book and then you try and sell it to people. It's like a completely opposite process. In terms of deciding which way you want to go, this question at the top, or these 2 questions, okay, how much control do you want? This is literally the biggest question for you. do you want, for example, do you want to decide the title? Do you want to decide the book cover? Do you want to decide when the book is published? Back in 2007, when I finished my first book, I looked at traditional publishing, and someone told me, oh, it will take you a year to get an agent. It will take another 2 years for the book to come out. And I was like, no, don't want to wait that long. And that was in sort of 2007, before the Kindle took off, before self-publishing was as easy as it is today. So it really is a decision for you to think about. But how much control do you want, and how much time to market? So is this a time-sensitive book for you? Does it tie into your business now? Is it something you really care about right now? And what process do you want to go through? Now, people think, oh, self-publishing so easy. It's totally not easy. It's a completely different process to traditional publishing. So one, you're trying to get through the selection process of agents and publishing houses, and the other one is your book might be up there out in the world and nobody buys it, so the selection process is reaching readers yourself. Both have their challenges, both have their pros and cons. Again, I'm sure Reedsy has a whole load of other sessions on publishing choices. Also, what else do you want to do with the book? So, for example, with nonfiction, you may have another business. Maybe you're a coach. Maybe you sell other products. Maybe you do courses or whatever else, or you have a product. And if you want to have more of a business around your book, then it is worth considering, how are you going to build that in? And I'll come back to that in a minute. The other thing to consider is, how will you reach readers? And you have to think about this, whether you go traditional or self-publish, because if you go traditional, you have to put it in your book proposal. And if you self-publish, you have to do it. So you have to consider options for building an author platform. For example, guesting on podcasts, or for me, doing this presentation is part of my book marketing for how to write nonfiction. So you have to think, how do I reach people who might be interested in my book, and how do I give them value? And hopefully you're getting value out of this, so that they might be interested. And even if they're not, they go away happy that they learned something. So again, I wanted to mention using ChatGPT for marketing research. Again, most writers struggle with book marketing. It is not something we love. I mean, Ricardo from Reedsy has a couple of books on book marketing, and that has loads of great ideas in. This is another option here. So this is where I asked ChatGPT, can you give me 10 podcasts I can pitch for topics around this book? Don't include famous ones. So don't tell me to pitch Tim Ferriss. And they must have released an episode in the last 3 months, and just give me a list with no podcast art or pictures, because before it was giving me all these lists with all these pictures. And then it gave me, here are 10 niche podcasts that fit this kind of theme. And I won't go through them all, but there are links and you can research further. Now, this is, again, super useful, again, if you're writing a book proposal for a publisher, or if you're doing your own book marketing. I use this all the time to find new podcasts, and then you can also say, please draft me an email for the pitch. So this is hopefully a super useful tip, even if you already have a book. Okay, we're almost towards the end, so you can start thinking about your questions. Okay, so number 7, build a business ecosystem around the book. Now, this is definitely a more advanced topic, but I wanted to cover this up front, because if you want to make money with your book, then thinking about this before you publish is a really good idea. So, for example, taking it off the page, one of the most obvious things that you will see nonfiction authors doing is professional speaking. So again, as Martin mentioned at the beginning, we were at a conference called Author Nation, and I was speaking there, Ricardo was speaking there, and that is part of our careers as authors, as entrepreneurs. Speaking, you can get paid to travel. Obviously, I'm in the UK. You can get paid to travel. You can get paid accommodation. You can get sent to different cool places. So that's one obvious thing. You can also do live events, webinars like this. Now, obviously, this is a free one, but you can do paid online webinars. You can do podcasting, courses. You can have a community. So I have a community on Patreon, and that's something many authors do. You can also have services like editing. I know there's many editors at Reedsy, or consulting, coaching, all of these things. So you can add those into your book. So let's say you are writing a book on writing. If you're an editor, in fact, my editor, Kristen Tate, she was on my podcast just over a week ago. Her book is called Novel Study, and it is a book about studying different novels in order to learn better fiction techniques. Now, she's an editor. So that book, it both makes money from selling copies of that book, but it also brings in new clients into her editing business. So it's a perfect example of a business ecosystem around a book. Obviously, we're also, if you're self-publishing or even if you're traditional publishing, it really is about multiple streams of income from the book. So even just with, in fact, you can see, oh, it's that way. You can see the book, How to Write Nonfiction there behind me. And I've got an ebook, I've got an audiobook that I narrate. So I narrate all my nonfiction audiobooks. I've got a large print, I've got a hardback, I've got a workbook, and I have bundles. So, and also I've got translations coming, and I have sold books in 190 countries. So you can think about, well, just the book itself can sell all over the place. And just a bit of a tip here, if you are doing a traditional deal for your book, and let's say you sell it in North America, which is the US and Canada are usually included in a North American deal, then what you can then do is that can go with a traditional publisher. You can self-publish the rest in the rest of the world in English. For example, the UK is a big market, also Australia, and in fact, most of the world reads books in English. So those 190 countries I've sold in are English language sales. Okay, so that is some ideas for multiple streams of income. And we are going to just one more slide just to mention I do have the slides available at thecreativepenn.com/Reedsy 25 slides. So you can download those if you would like them. And also, if you are interested in my book, then you can get it right now at thecreativepenn.com/Write Nonfiction 2. And it will be on all the usual places in all the usual formats in February. It's on pre-order a lot of places. Okay, so maybe we'll just leave that up for a minute and we will start doing some questions. Martin, there's one there about how do you manage bundles? That's a great idea, because this is definitely a big tip. So that is from Growth Warrior.
Here we go. How do you manage bundles? I imagine that means bundling like your novels together?
Well, in this case, bundling nonfiction. So yes, so for example, if you go to my store, creativepenbooks.com, which is my Shopify store, and this is the first answer, which is if you have your own store, you can do what the hell you like. Now, of course, you can buy this on Amazon, you can buy it on Audible, but on my store, I can control bundles. So you can get the successful nonfiction author bundle in print or audio or ebook, and that there will be a bundle of books in a different format, or you can get the workbook for a better deal than you can buy them individually. And also you can't buy a lot of those things on Amazon. So this is a tip if you want to use Shopify, if you want to sell direct, where you can make more money per book, frankly. And also you get the email from the customer and you can start developing more of a relationship. Then doing bundles is like the number one thing to make profit. So hopefully that helps.
We've got another sort of question here from Jessica JJ Lutz. At what stage of writing the book do you start marketing? And what is the first platform you market to apart from your community?
Okay, so this really just depends if this is your first book and you have absolutely nothing at all. What I would say is if you're starting from zero, then personally, I think you should finish the draft and it should be with an editor before you consider marketing. The main reason is that some people are like, oh no, you should start years in advance. But what I found with my first book, Career Change, which was originally called How to Enjoy Your Job or Find a New One. So I did what people said and I built a website and I started trying to build an audience. And then the book was out and I was like, I don't want to do this. This is not what I want to do. And then I moved more into fiction and writing and all that. So I think you should finish the draft of whatever book it is and work with an editor, because then you will know more about what the hell it is. For example, if I had started marketing Pilgrimage 2 years before the book came out, I would have just done walking tips and I wouldn't have done menopause. But that's what it turned into. So what I would say is don't do it too soon, otherwise you might find you're attracting completely different audience than you were expecting. And then the first platform, this is a tough one because of course these things change all the time, but it really just should be an email list. You should be building an email list of people and choose one social media that you're gonna get good at. Social media is obviously a nightmare for everybody. But pick one that you enjoy and maybe focus on that first.
All right, we have a question here from B. Bauman. I'm a presenter and want to write about presenting. What do you do if you feel the market is flooded with books about presenting?
Oh, this is a great question, especially as I have a book on public speaking myself. Mine is public speaking for authors, creatives, and other introverts. So that immediately gives you an answer. So when my book could be public speaking for anyone, seriously, but I already niched it down with the subtitle. And so that would be the first thing. You're a presenter, want to write about presenting. Well, that's too big. Are you a teacher presenting to school kids? Are you a person who is presenting, I don't know, to a different culture? Are you, who are you and who are the audience? That would be the first question. Also, look, there are books on every single thing under the sun. And the point is, this is your book. So, of course, there are millions of books on presenting and public speaking, just like there are on writing nonfiction or writing in general or romance books or thrillers or whatever. That doesn't matter. The fact is, this is your book. This is your experience. This is your knowledge that you're sharing and your audience. So there will be people who resonate with you who don't want my book. They want your book. Or there are people who are like, oh, actually, I like that Joanna Penn. I'm going to buy her book. So what our goal is as creators is to connect with people. The fact that you're still here means that in some way you're connecting with me. And so, that's what you've got to think. The first questions we talked about, what is driving you and who are your target market? And then maybe, like we did, use ChatGPT to help you create a title and a subtitle that will help you stand out.
Lynn Joseph has a question here. Great presentation. Agreed. Do you find that the multiple streams of income are much easier with a how-to book than a memoir?
Hell yeah. I mean, absolutely. I feel like memoir is, for many years, I could not understand why people wrote memoirs, because I was like, we only have a limited time and I need to make some money with my books. And then I started writing a memoir, and it truly was one of the most transformational things personally for myself. And it was the first book of mine that won an award. So that meant a lot. And it also made me really quite a lot of money and still makes me money. And that was a surprise as well. So the fact is, a memoir is a very, very different beast. And when you want to do a memoir, you will be driven to write a memoir and you won't be thinking about multiple streams of income. Whereas this book, How to Write Nonfiction, it is very clearly a money book, as in it's one of my cash flow books. It's very useful, but yes, it also brings in money for me every month in different ways. And it has a very clear value to the audience, whereas memoir, it's really hard to communicate value to the audience when it comes to memoir. So they're hard to market. But again, very, very worthwhile writing if you feel drawn to that.
Fantastic. We've got a question
Oh,
here
can I
from...
just answer this one?
Sure.
Oh.
Which one?
Kay says, is there a workbook to go with version 2 of the writing non-fiction book? Yes, there is. And the workbook, for a start, yes, there is, but it's only for sale through my store, creativepenbooks.com, or the link that I shared before. You can get everything there and in bundles. But basically, the workbook, and it's a really good idea if you're doing non-fiction, because you can use those workbooks in talks. You can do, and there's a digital version, like a PDF that people can write on a tablet, and it contains all the questions from the book. So it doesn't contain the text of the book, but it contains all the questions and people can write in them. So when I do this workshop as a full day event, I can use those workbooks in the sessions. People like buying them, and these are spiral bound, so they lie flat, which to me is really important. I use bookvault.app with Shopify, and the problem if you use Amazon or Ingram is you won't be able to get a lie flat workbook, and for me it must be lie flat.
Yeah, you don't want to be breaking the spine every single time you want to write something in there.
No, exactly.
Okay, we've got some specific questions from MLD Creative Enterprises. I believe MLD is probably your first name. Came in late, sorry. What about audiobook distribution? You mentioned that you record your own audiobook. Is it sort of a good additional revenue stream, or do you feel it's just something that's sort of good to have it on every platform?
Non-fiction in audio is fantastic. It really is a fantastic medium. Obviously, I have a podcast, the Creative Pen podcast, so people are used to hearing my voice. But I think the voice of the author for non-fiction and especially memoir is really good. Now, you do have to upskill. I do actually have another book, Audio for Authors, which goes into all of that. But in terms of distribution specifically, there are two things, two sites. First of all, acx.com, which is for Audible, pretty much Audible only, and then findawayvoices.com, and that you can use for over 40 different libraries and audiobook services, including Audible if you like, but I prefer to go direct to Audible. And that is now owned by Spotify, so you go on Spotify. But again, I also sell my audio direct and in bundles, and so you can actually make a lot more money with audio selling that direct. So there are three things there, and if you want to sell direct, we use BookFunnel. Now, I know these are lots of words that I'm saying that if you're new, you'll be like, what the hell is she talking about? So this is an advanced level type of self-publishing when you're doing your own audio. But again, if you need any of those later, you can always message me through my site.
Shopify is, I think it's sort of go-to direct sales platform everyone seems to be using these days. It's quite good. You can sort of just plug it directly into your site. What's the sort of big benefit of it? Are the sort of fees they take sort of reasonable compared to some of the alternatives, or is it just the flexibility of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, if you go direct to Amazon, so let's take the ebook. You can, if you price your ebook at $9.99 and $9.99, you can get 70% from Amazon. With Shopify, you can get 95%. Basically. And with print books, it's even more. With audiobooks, it's even more, because the audio model is so bad now in terms of what Audible and all that do for credits and stuff like that. So essentially, you can make more money. You can get books to people faster. So basically, you can buy this from me right now from my store, and it's on pre-order everywhere else. So it's benefit to the customer. You also get the email, so you know who's actually buying your books, which you don't know anywhere else. But yeah, there we go. But please, if you are going to do nonfiction books, and even if you do a book deal with a publisher, try and retain audio rights, or at least make sure you're negotiating that, because it can be very lucrative. For print books, I sell an awful lot in audio. I would say 80% of my audio income is nonfiction, even though I have far more fiction. than non-fiction.
Linda has a question here. Do you have an agent for foreign rights? First of all, I guess, do you have translated editions of your books?
Yes, so I have French, Spanish, Italian, Korean, some other ones. But yes, I have a couple of agents. And what happens with nonfiction, but also I've gone direct to quite a lot of publishers, or they've come to me. When you start selling books yourself, people come to you and say, hey, we'd like to do a deal for this book. And yeah, so you certainly don't need an agent in order to do foreign rights deals. Are there any more questions on sort of the writing of it? I'm just, I know some of this stuff was a bit advanced in terms of the business side.
Yeah, there's some bits sort of talking about, well, this one, MR Beachboard asks, so what's the difference between a travel memoir and a travel narrative? Which it feels like a sort of semantics question.
No, I like it. And actually, a friend of mine, Jeremy, who has a website called Travel Writing World, he has the 10 types of travel books. It's a really good post. I linked to it actually in How to Write Nonfiction, but essentially a travel memoir. So a memoir has to have a story arc of transformation. So the person in the memoir goes, let's say, from lost to found, which is Cheryl Strayed's Wild. A travel narrative might be walking the Pacific Crest Trail, which is what she did in Wild. But a travel narrative might just be the travel that you went through, and there was no personal transformation. Whereas a memoir is a personal transformation. And anything with the word memoir in, it is much more personal and much more emotional. You're meant to have an emotional reaction to a memoir. It is not an autobiography. It is a snapshot of a transformation. And if you've read a lot of memoir, you'll get what I mean. But a travel narrative is like, I've walked the Camino de Santiago. I could have written a travel narrative about the Camino, walking the Camino, but that wasn't what I did.
That could have been like, I walked that, like I met some nice people. It was generally a very pleasant experience all around.
Let's pick up Phyllis's question here. Could you speak to your revision process?
Phyllis asks...
So I talked a bit about this in terms of my revision process is I very much I write on Scrivener, I reorganize on Scrivener, move things around, and then I edit each on the screen, and I turn the little flags yellow. And again, I've got a tutorial on Scrivener on my YouTube channel if you want to look at that. Once I've done that, that's when I print it out. And I don't know if you were here earlier and I kind of waved one of my examples around. I print it out and then I hand write all over it. That is the biggest revision. Huge revision at that stage. And then I type all of the changes back into Scrivener. And then I run it through Pro Writing Aid, prowritingaid.com. Grammarly is the other option. Both of them are great. I personally prefer Pro Writing Aid. And then I work with a human editor who goes through and does the final edit and proofread. So that's my process.
Cool. Keep them coming. I think we have a little bit more time. You do actually write so many books every year, and you're always on the sort of promotional trail. What sort of proportion of your time would you reckon you actually do block out to writing within your sort of professional life?
Oh, I'm glad you feel that way, Martin. I always feel inadequate compared to these people who've got out so many more books than me. But basically, obviously, I've been doing this a long time, and I do around three projects per year. Some of my books are longer, like How to Write Nonfiction is around 70,000 words, but some of them are very short. So, Pilgrimage was 50. I've got a book on productivity that's only 25. So different projects take different time. I do short stories, this kind of thing. But in terms of my process, mornings I write stuff or I edit stuff. So mornings are my creative time, and then afternoons are marketing, business, podcasting, stuff like this, that kind of thing. When I had a day job, the hour before work was on writing, and then an hour after work was on business and marketing. Now, Laura's just said, do you do all these amazing things alone, or do you have a team? So I am the only employee in my one-person business. I do obviously have some freelancers. I do work with freelancers, and I use all the tools that I can. So we mentioned social media. I use Buffer app to schedule my social media. I use, as we said, we like ChatGPT. You can ask it to come up with 10 different tweets or 10 different Instagram posts or that kind of thing. So what I do, because this is my job, and as I said, I've been full-time since 2011. I run a multi-six-figure business, and I have to do this from marketing and promotion work in order to sell books. Now, people listening, you get to decide how much time you want to spend on marketing, and that will depend on how many books you want to sell. But writing a book is a completely different thing to making money from a book. So definitely keep that in mind.
I think you just made one sale from Lubosh, so you can check that afterwards. This is the Reedsy bump that we promise all guests. We have a question here I sort of saw from someone. Oh dear, I had it a second ago. Apologies. This was, I think someone else just mentioned it recently. If you're writing, mentioning names of non-fiction people, this applies to memoir, do you need to get permission? Is this a sort of a dangerous ground whenever you're putting anyone's name in a book?
Yeah, there's actually a chapter on legalities because this is a big deal. It's going to depend on so many things, and I know that's annoying, but if you are writing a rage memoir about, your ex-husband or some family member who you have a grudge against, that is when you really need to be stopping and really thinking about what you want to do. I mean, certainly here in the UK, we have very strong libel laws. So you have to be very, very careful about what you say. That's less so in other countries. But what I would suggest is that if there is anything that is going to be objectionable to anyone else or could damage someone else, what you have to remember is if you're writing a memoir, particularly, then it is your story, and you can't write someone else's story, and every story has different points of view, basically. So I was divorced. I'm happily married now, but my first husband, his experience of our divorce was completely different to my experience of our divorce, and I'm not writing his story. In fact, I haven't written that story at all. But, so you have to think about that. Then in terms of, let's say, quotes, you have to consider the principles of fair use. So in How to Write Nonfiction and all my books, I quote from other people's work. You have to have proper citations. You have to be very careful with your research and don't plagiarize, obviously, but understanding fair use. Again, there's lots of specific help around this, lots of resources. So don't let it stop you writing, but definitely think about it as part of the editorial.
Joanne has been responsible for bumper number 2. If we had a little bell noise, it'll be going again.
Thanks so much. I hope you enjoy Pilgrimage.
This is a fairly broad question, but I think maybe if you're okay touching on it, are all of your books self-published? If you use both, which do you prefer? You're very much, I think, known as self-publishing author, but do you have anything trad-pubbed?
I have books in translation, traditionally published, and I do have a novel with an agent right now because I'm turning 50 this year, and I was like, do you know, I should really try traditional publishing. But this is where, look, I've always run my own businesses since the year 2000. I've been running my own businesses. So when it came to the book business, I looked at it, and I was a 6-figure consultant before doing this, and I wanted to give up my job. So when I decided to become a writer, I designed a business. And being an independent author, even back in 2007, even before the Kindle, it was still a better deal than getting a traditional publishing deal, just in terms of the percentage royalties, let alone anything else. So I decided from day one that I was going to run my own independent business. And as I said, I've signed other deals along the way, but it's very successful for me. It's been very successful for other people. It all depends on your definition of success. So Pilgrimage is self-published and won an award at London Book Fair. So you can win awards, you can make money, you can do all kinds of things as an independent author. There's nothing holding you back. It's more about what do you want? Like if you want penguin on the spine of your book, then don't self-publish, basically.
I could refer you to someone who can use Photoshop. We can get that done for you as well. We just
No,
one time.
that is not fair use. That is not
Yeah.
legal.
It'll be something that's legally similar but legally distinct to the penguin logo. I think we have just about time for one more question from Gabor. Is an academic background like a PhD necessary to write a credible non-fiction book? I have ideas on philosophy, but no formal qualification. What's your take on that?
That is a great question, and I love it because this holds so many people back. So I have a degree in theology. I have another one in psychology. I don't have degrees in writing, publishing, marketing, podcasting, any of that. It is all self-taught and learned along the way, and it's my experience. So this is the main thing, and it depends what you mean by credible. If you are trying to write a history book that will be used in a university, then for sure you need a PhD and you need an academic press. But for pretty much anyone else, you do not need a PhD or a master's or any of this. Most people read at a high school level. And so if you're overeducated, it can actually stop your writing reaching people. But mainly what you want to think is, why, that thing I said up the front, why are you writing this book? And usually it's because you're one step ahead of the person you're trying to help. And in fact, you're probably more credible when you're closer to that person. So because I'm not famous, hopefully you'll find my book on how to write nonfiction more useful than someone you think is super famous because I'm closer to your situation. And maybe, Gabor, that is true for you as well. But it is more about who can you help with what you want to share in the world, and then getting it out there. And I think that's probably all we've got time for. But just to say, you can reach me at thecreativepen.com. There's, you can message me there. Come on over to my podcast, The Creative Pen Podcast. I also have a YouTube channel, or check out the book. But I've really enjoyed being with you this evening.
Really appreciate you joining us for this. This is absolutely incredible. As she mentioned, it was offering something absolutely free out of the kindness of her heart, but also this is a good lesson in how one goes about sort of promoting themselves and promoting their work. So hopefully everyone's learned from this on a couple of levels. Joanna, really want to thank you for joining us, and for everyone at home, thank you for being with us and tuning in live. Really appreciate everyone sticking around this much. If you're still here, please give us a like and perhaps consider subscribing to our channel, where we have new video and live content every single week. Joanna, thanks once again. That's thecreativepen.com. That's where you can find everything she does, including her fantastic podcast. Joe, everyone home, cheers. Thanks, Joanna. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.